Good evening, everybody. I am Brett L. Pape. That's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, we made it. We're here. Can't wait. Real excited about getting into it. It seems like every year the off season gets longer and longer. I don't know if you've heard anything about the Oliver Anthony anthem, but I'd like him to write a new one where it's just strictly him being pissed off at the length of how long we have to wait from the Super Bowl until tomorrow. But damn it, we made it, Coach.
We did, man. We made it. We're here. We are on the, some would say for football fanatics, this is Christmas Eve. This is the night before Christmas when the NFL season kicks off, and I'm certainly ready for it, man.
Yeah, as am I. What I'm really excited about is just all the young talent, all the young infusion of talent from the draft over the last few years, this year's draft, the young quarterbacks in the AFC. Just really looking forward to seeing how this whole year plays out. Hey, let's jump right into the show. Let's get right into our news and injuries. First bit of news, and this is great news if you're on the West Coast and you're a fan of the San Francisco 49ers. Nick Bosa signs huge deal today. He's playing week 1. He will be making the trip with the team to face Pittsburgh. Obviously, the defending NFL Defensive Player of the Year. To get him back and in Kupp, they got to feel pretty good, right, Coach?
You got to feel really good if you're a San Francisco 49ers fan. I'm not so much if you're a Steelers fan going into week 1. With Kenny Pickett coming into year 2 and the expectations they have there in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season yet, and some people are picking the Steelers as a dark horse to win the AFC North. So, hey, great timing for Nick Bosa. We talked about that last week, or last Wednesday on our kickoff show for this NFL season, that we felt Nick Bosa would be back before game 1, and we felt like Chris Jones wouldn't. And it looks like we're going to be 2 for 2 on those calls.
You know, it's crazy because we also talked about in that show just the financial differences between the two teams. Team 1 being Kansas City and the contract that they have to have. And they love the contract they have because that means they have a Patrick Mahomes on their team. But on the other side of the coast, you've got Purdy now virtually making nothing. Did you see that tweet out today with just the different contracts that they owe people next year? It's crazy the amount of money they're spending, and they're not having to spend it on the quarterback position, which makes their roster just so incredibly strong.
Hey, it's good to be Mr. Irrelevant, right? Or at least good to be the team that hits on Mr. Irrelevant. But yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy's due to make, I think it's $870,000 this year in comparison to top quarterbacks. And the guy was QB6 in the games he started last year in the regular season, where he was 5-0 as a starter. So now you get a healthy Debo, you've got a healthy Brandon Ayuk. I think it's going to have a special year. George Kittle's a little bit banged up. We'll see what that looks like here in a little bit. But if you're a Niner fan, it's an exciting time going into this season for sure.
Let's move on. Let's go talk. You already brought him up briefly when you talked about both these guys last week, but no Chris Jones. And you know, I saw a report today where essentially Chris Jones says they value me here, I value me there, and we'll, you know, I respect their opinion, but I respect my own. And virtually, they're at a stalemate, Coach, and it may not be resolved anytime soon. And again, the financial differences in the teams. It's a big hindrance to be able to get him in, but he certainly played up to any type of money that he were to get.
Hey, he was number 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year behind Nick Bosa, who we just talked about. He was number 1. And Chris Jones is special, man. 92.0 overall PFF grade last year, 92.2 pass rush grade. He was a 78 against the run. The guy can, having him in week 1, we'll talk about that game. You know, we're going to talk about tomorrow night, but that's a big loss for Kansas City right there. Not just having Travis Kelce potentially out, but now you have Chris Jones, a stalwart in that the front end of that defense. So not good for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I think they'll get the deal done. I know he's threatening to hold out until week 8 because he can afford to and all those comments, but I think at the end of the day, cooler heads will prevail, and Chris Jones will be in a Kansas City uniform here pretty soon. I think by week 4, you'll probably get that deal done. I think that's the extent of how long I think that would take to get that deal done. Could be wrong, but reading the tea leaves, I feel like it'll get done sooner than later.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know one person who's going to sleep pretty well knowing that, and that's Jared Goff. But you already mentioned Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce yesterday unfortunately suffered hyperextension in his knee in practice, and now he's listed as questionable heading into tomorrow night's game. You got to feel like if it was a Sunday game, there's little or no doubt that he would play. Heard Jason Kelce kind of talk briefly about it today. Said that he's dealing with swelling issues, and along with that, obviously some discomfort, but he feels like he's going to be able to play. This injury, as it relates to fantasy football, if he doesn't go, he doesn't go. You still don't want to do anything with Gray tomorrow night, do you?
No, I'm not touching Noah Gray. I'm not touching Blake Bell. He's been on 5 different teams in 8 years, has 1 touchdown over his career. Noah Gray is a guy that, we'll talk a little bit about more when we talk about the matchup. But, yeah, I'm not touching either one of those guys. And it's unfortunate, and it could be one of those games where you play a little cat and mouse with your opponent, right? You make it sound like there's a chance Travis Kelce is going to play. You continue to have to game plan for that and just review that with your defense on the defensive side of the ball for Detroit. But he's not playing tomorrow night. I mean, if he does, I'd be surprised. I don't think it's worth the. I just don't think it's worth the risk if he's not 100%. I think if you've taken all the precautions, and these soft tissue injuries are a little bit tough. First time Kelce's really had to deal with it. Right. If there's any question marks that look, it's week 1. I'm not going to gamble. I might put him out there a little bit to be a decoy, but I'm not going to try to press it. Now, if he's healthy and he can go, and the doctors have checked him out and they feel like it's a full go, then hey, all bets are off. I just think right now, I think it's doubtful that Travis Kelce is the Travis Kelce we've been accustomed to seeing.
All right, we'll talk more about that impact when we get into the game in a few minutes, but let's move on with the news, and that's Joe Burrow. He's now listed as day-to-day, and it looks like he's going to be out there on the field. And as a fan strictly of the NFL, you got to be happy that Burrow's going to be out there because that's a real exciting team and a young team, and it's just better when he's out there.
Well, my Scott Fishbowl team certainly appreciates it because I took Joe Burrow. And I only took 2 quarterbacks in Scott Fishbowl this year because there's 3,300 people in the tournament, and if you're going to win, you got to do some things a little bit dicey. So I didn't grab, a 3rd or 4th starting quarterback. I rolled with 2, and Joe Burrow's leading the front there. So great news for Cincinnati going into a tough matchup against Cleveland. That's an AFC North matchup that is a very good matchup. So, hey, wheels up for Jamar Chase, wheels up for T. Higgins, wheels up for Tyler Boyd. Irv Smith maybe even gets an opportunity to get involved there. So I think it's good news for all of us. And when you saw the practice video of him pulling up lame, there was some concerns for me initially was, hey, maybe that's an Achilles tendon, and it's not. It was just a calf strain. Those things can linger for a little bit, but they've taken all the precautions. So looks like Joe Burrow's going to be ready to go. So that's exciting for Cincinnati.
Also exciting, Breece Hall coming back this week, expected to play, told today, or it was reported today that he's not going to be on a snap count. I've got a Breece Hall jersey right across my room. I'm looking at, obviously huge fan. But with that, they say he's not on a snap count, but I don't know about you, Coach, but I wouldn't expect anything more than 10 to 14 touches out of him. And I'd be comfortable and happy with that as someone who also kind of wants to see him ease in a bit.
Yeah, I think 8 to 12 touches in the run game, and I think you might see anywhere between 3 to 4 targets in the passing game, depending on, again, snap count, but and how the game script goes. But hey, Breece Hall is a guy that I watched at Iowa State, was always real high on him, loved him as a prospect. It's great to see him bounce back. I tell you what, they built him a lot better than they used to because these guys bounce back a lot quicker from these injuries than we ever used to. So it's exciting time for the Jets fan. I know with Aaron Rodgers coming in, you bring in Dalvin Cook just in case as insurance, really create a 2-headed monster there. And then you've got Garrett Wilson. We've seen what Aaron Rodgers has done with Devontae Adams and his time there and what he can do with a legit wide receiver 1. So it's exciting time for Jets fans. I know Mike Greeny on Get Up in the Mornings is super excited for what's going on in New York. So good to see Breece Hall healthy.
Yes, it should be exciting. So let's move on. Next one, another back that I know that you like a lot, and it looks like Devin Achane is trending to debut this week. Suffered a shoulder injury. About Jeff Wilson being on IR. Don't know exactly how much we're going to see out of Achane this week, but he's another guy that I just want to get my eyes on in a real-life football game. So looking forward to see what we're going to see from him.
Yeah, I had some concerns. You and I talked a lot about this. I was afraid Miami was going to make a move to bring in a running back. And
it wasn't like they didn't try from what it sounded like.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously it didn't work out, so that's great for Devon A-Chain, and it's exciting to see what Raheem Mostert's 31, if I remember correctly. Jeff Wilson obviously going down does create an excellent opportunity with Devon A-Chain, and we know that Mike McDaniel comes with the run game he brought over from San Francisco, so we know they're going to be good there. But exciting times. I was very excited about him as a prospect. This guy's Olympic speed. I mean, he was a track guy. I think he was a lot of people thought he was going to run a sub 4.3. He ran a 4.32. I think that 4.32 is close enough to a sub 4.3. I think I'll just realize, hey, dude's fast. So excited to see what he can do. Tough matchup in week one, so it's good that he's going to be available.
We talked about it before, and what really impressed me, despite his small stature, is that he's a physical runner. He's not afraid to run in between the tackles, and I'm expecting to see some good things. And yet, at the same time, I also wouldn't be completely shocked if it doesn't work out, because you see the guys on the analytical side, and they say all those factors are just really hard to overcome. But we both certainly hope that he does. A next injury, unfortunately, Cooper Kupp out with a hamstring injury. It looks like it could be multiple weeks, even though they haven't really come out and said it. I don't know about you, Coach, but a part of me feels like if it starts out bad, which most of us think it will for the Rams, a little tank job, since they finally have a first-round pick, isn't out of the realm of possibilities. So with that being said, how much do you think we're going to see from Cooper Kupp at all this year?
Well, I think that's the big thing, right? It's not worth the gamble, in my opinion. I mean, you've got an LA Rams team that, is only a couple years removed from a Super Bowl, but it's Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, Cam Akers, an opportunity for those guys to step up with him out. And if it's me and I'm Sean McVay, I understand he's 30. I understand he's getting up there in age, but Cooper Kupp is a very, very, very special talent that if sitting him out in week 1, week 2, week 3 makes the most sense with our long-term plan, then I think you do that. But certainly if he's ready to go, he's going to want to play. But you're playing Seattle in week 1, right? So it's not worth it. I don't think he's going to play. I think that's pretty much a foregone conclusion at this point. We're not going to see Cooper Kupp this week.
Definitely not this week. I'm just concerned if I was somebody who had him on his team, I'm concerned that he may not play much at all, because that is an injury that lingers. And then you get to the point where maybe he's finally healthy. And I kind of think they shut down Aaron Donald pretty early last year because they were struggling. And I wouldn't surprise me if they do the same. It was all I was kind of really getting at there. Last bit of news that we're going to focus on before we get into tomorrow night's game. And that's, I don't know about you, but I'm so excited about this player. Jackson Smith-Njigba is looking like he's going to play, which is remarkable when you consider after he made that great catch in his last preseason game, and he suffered a fracture on the wrist. Looks like he's going to play week 1. And I'm probably much like we talked about with A-Chain. I'm probably not going to play him in many leagues, but I can't wait to watch him.
Yeah, this offense has a chance to be special. We also saw Geno Smith resurrect his career last year. You've got Tyler Lockett, who just every single year just seems to be as consistent as there is. DK Metcalf coming back, another year older, another year of experience. And now you're bringing Jackson Smith-Njigba to play in the slot. And then you've got Kenneth Walker, you've got Zach Charbonnet, who we're both high on out of UCLA. I'm excited to see what's going to happen in Seattle. So having Jackson Smith-Njigba ready to go in week 1, I think is great for Seattle. And again, I expect the Seattle Rams game to get a little bit out of hand. I think by mid-third quarter, early fourth quarter for sure, that game's probably out of reach. And so you're not going to have to play your starters deep into the fourth quarter. So very exciting times, man. I know we all love Jackson Smith-Njigba as a prospect. So good to see he's going to be healthy.
Yeah, can't wait. All right, you ready? Let's jump into tomorrow night's game. Obviously, Thursday night games usually set aside for defending Super Bowl champ and some team. Usually it's like a rival in the same division or sometimes same conference, but they chose to go with Detroit, which I don't know about you, Coach, to see where they have gone from and where they're at now, the excitement, the buzz with what Campbell, I know he got hired on a show. We talked about it. You weren't very high on it, and I'm not calling you out. This isn't fantasy receipts here. This is just me saying that he had a lot to prove, and whether or not somebody who seems – it's so funny because Jared Goff had to feel like he had to defend him as being smart, because most people look at Coach Campbell as being a guy that is just a motivator and an incredible work ethic. I'm going to get you going. You're going to play your ass off. And then he's going to surround himself around with great coaches. But what they've been able to do, not only just to get them to this point, more importantly, for the NFL to feel like they were worthy enough to bring in the audience. I'm pretty excited about it, and I can't wait to dive into it with you, Coach.
No, I think it's going to be a fun game. What a great game to kick off the slate. You almost wish you had Travis Kelce, and everybody healthy, as I throw that together in one word. But yeah, I think it's exciting times. I think if you're a Detroit fan, you should be very, very excited going into the season. And to your point, I was not excited about the Dan Campbell hire. I felt like it was a franchise looking for an identity, looking to get out of the cellar and get out of mediocrity. And you're bringing in a coach that wasn't an offensive or defensive coordinator. He's never really been a leader in the locker room from a coaching perspective. But I tell you what, the enthusiasm, and you just surround yourself with good coaches and a good hire with Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator. You've hit on some draft picks. You've got some young talent. It's exciting times if you're a Detroit fan. So this is going to be a fun game.
And then you got on the other side of the ball a team that over the last 5 years is pretty much – it's not – I wouldn't call it a dynasty with only 2 Super Bowl wins. But what Kansas City's been able to do and kind of rechange the entire offensive systems throughout the NFL with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Let's kick off now. I'm ready to go. So let's dive into it. You got Detroit 0-0, obviously, against Kansas City. Detroit opens up as a plus 4.5 on the odds. And let's get right into the starting sits, Coach. We're going to start off with the visitors, Detroit. Everybody has talked about how strong they are as far as the skill position and what they bring fantasy value-wise. So there's probably going to be a lot of starts on this side of the ball for you.
Yeah, and there's a good chance this game ends up being a little bit of a shootout, right? I mean, both these defenses, Kansas City without Chris Jones, they've got some question marks on that side of the ball. Detroit has improved, but they're still not quite there yet. I like Jared Goff. He comes in as QB 15 this week on Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. I like the matchup for him. I like, obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs, who's the RB 15. And David Montgomery, no Chris Jones, an opportunity to run between the tackles. He takes on that Jamal Williams role, so to speak. No, I don't think he's Jamal Williams as far as getting the 17 touchdowns, but I do think you're going to see some short yardage. He's going to handle the early down work, I think, early in the season. But Jahmyr Gibbs, he's not just a pass catching back. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is going to have a special season. I think he's going to see 100-plus targets. I think he's going to get a decent opportunity there in the rushing game as well. So I'm excited for those guys. And, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'm playing both running backs if I've got them. I'm playing Jared Goff. I'm playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I'm even playing Sam Laporta in week 1. I think it's a good matchup for him. I get he's a rookie. I get we could talk about the history of rookies and what they've done. But, look, the game is changing. He gets an opportunity. Brock Wright and James Mitchell, we saw what that was like after the T.J. Hawkinson trade. I think Sam Laporta's got an opportunity in week 1 to have 5 or 6 grabs, see 8 or 9 targets, and potentially find the end zone. So I'm playing Sam Laporta if I've got him. Again, it depends on roster construction, but I'm high on Sam Laporta this week.
Sam Laporta is a guy out of Iowa, much like Kittle and Hawkinson and such. And from day one that he's been there, he's pretty much been in the starting group. So I'm very high on him as well. And, this is a great tight end class. And you kind of hope all that talk about historically what rookie tight ends do, you kind of hope that goes by the wayside because obviously it's more fun when we got 5 strong guys that we can kind of depend on week on, week out. Other side of the ball, Kansas City. And the irony of Kansas City is that with all the huge contracts that they have and with the huge contract that they have the quarterback, some of their skilled guys are kind of going real cheap with them. They're real young on that side of the ball. And, if they do have a free agent, it's somebody like MVS who's come in who doesn't cost enormous amount of money. So despite all that, who are you excited about playing this week from them?
Well, Patrick Mahomes is the obvious. I don't think we need to go down that road and explain that one. I think that's pretty obvious. You're playing him in rain, sleet, snow, indoor, outdoor. I don't care. You're playing Patrick Mahomes. I like Jerick McKinnon. I actually like Jerick McKinnon more than I like Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco's coming off a torn labrum and a broken hand. Jerick McKinnon was a guy down the stretch, was extremely valuable to them and helped them make that Super Bowl run. I think with Pacheco being a little bit limited, you've got CEH, Pacheco, and you've got Jerick McKinnon. They're all healthy coming in this game, basically. And so I think Jerick McKinnon is a guy that's going to get you, I think, get you 35 to 45 rushing yards. I think he's going to get you 40 to 50 receiving yards. I think he finds the end zone in week 1. So you're looking at 80 all-purpose yards plus the touchdown. To me, he's a play. Again, depending on roster construction, if you've only got 2 running backs that you're going to play and you're going to play, 3 receivers as an example, he may not make your starting lineup because you've got your RB1 and RB2 in. But I like Jerick McKinnon as a play this week. I think the over for him was 70 yards or something like that, total yards. So that's one that I would take. And then Sky Moore, he's the other guy I like with Kelce out. I think he's going to lead the team in targets and receptions. I think he's the best option between MVS and Kadarius Toney. Richie James is more special teams punt returns. Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, Justin Ross. Those are not names that are going to excite you. So those are the 3 guys I trust this week: Patrick Mahomes, Jerick McKinnon, Sky Moore for Kansas City.
How do you see this game playing out? What are the best chances for Detroit to pull off an upset, and vice versa? What does Kansas City need to do to win the game at home?
It's going to sound obvious, right? But Detroit's got to control the clock. They've got to be able to run between the tackles. They've got to be able to establish the run, which is what Dan Campbell wants to do. Again, no Chris Jones with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. There's an opportunity to do that. They're not great in terms of their receiving core, but you do have Amon St. Brown, wide receiver 6 right now this week. And then you've got Sam Laporta, I think, can do some things. Josh Reynolds is serviceable. But I think it's a game that if Detroit can do that and just take care of the football, not turn it over, not give Patrick Mahomes a short field, have some sustainable drives, even if they ended up in a field goal, right? As you're getting some points, you keep Mahomes on the sideline, you limit the number of total plays that Kansas City can run, you give yourself a chance to win the game. I think if it gets into a shootout, even without Kelce, I think the advantage goes to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think it's a game that Detroit has a chance to win without Kelce, without Chris Jones. There's I would not be surprised at all to see Detroit win this game. And if I'm a betting man, I'm taking Detroit and I'll take the points.
It's so funny that you say that, because here, first and foremost, all I've been thinking about the last couple of days is 2018 Monday Night Football, LA Rams 54, Kansas City 52. That's Goff versus Mahomes. And I'm sure you remember that game. I believe that game was supposed to actually be played in Mexico City, but there were issues with the field. But you remember that game, correct, Coach?
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so with that, man, I'm hoping for something like that tomorrow night. And I feel like you had the same thing almost in LA Rams and how they were able to do it. You had a very young, fun, exciting team coming up. They ended up winning the Super Bowl, 2 or 3 years later? And you had a young quarterback who still at that time believed in himself, and his coach believed in him. If there's anything right now that we do know, that's Dan Campbell believes in Jared Goff. So I'm expecting a shootout. I would definitely take the over, and I also like Detroit. I have them winning 35-31.
There you go. We're on the same page. And hey, I think it's easy. Andy Reid 14-4 in his last 18 years of opening games. Patrick Mahomes as a starter is 5-0. He hasn't lost an opening game yet, and they're doing the ring ceremony, whatever you want to call it, tomorrow night. But I think there's a lot of things there that you can have Kansas City kind of get lost in the event, kind of what's going on, and maybe a little bit less focused week 1. So again, I know it's a tough ask, but I would love to see Detroit find a way to win this game outright.
You and me both, mostly just because it would be so exciting, because I don't see them. I think they got to win a shootout, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll find out. We don't really know. That's the best thing too, is we don't know much of anything at this point.
No, week 1 it's always a crapshoot. There's going to be 2 or 3 games. No one's going to see it coming, right? Someone's going to make the call and pick a couple of upsets just so they don't go chalk. They don't really have the stats to back it up or the reasons to back it up. It's gut feel, and that's kind of how week 1 plays out. It's a crapshoot, man. So we both agree. So we're taking Detroit in the points, and we're taking the over at 52.5.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, you're having a big party tomorrow night, correct?
What's that?
You said you were having a viewing party. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You could have a bunch of people over watching it tomorrow night?
No, no. That's on Sunday for the Cowboys game. Sunday Night Football when they play the Giants.
Gotcha. All right, hey, let's move on. New segment. Stump the Coach. Each week we're going to have some different thing, and this one's really not us trying to trick each other, us trying to quiz each other on some obscure fact or what this fantasy football player is based off the stats and so forth. Today we're just going to kind of talk about what our opinion is on a particular team. And now We didn't really give each other the opportunity to look at it, so we're just going to kind of talk off of what we have read or what we have heard in different podcasts and kind of just go from there and kind of give you our perspective. So first team, we're just going to hit on 3 teams each. You're going to take the AFC. I'm going to take the NFC. First team, just give me your fantasy impact players, and then also give me what you think the team is going to do as far as their outlook. And the first team that I got to go with is Buffalo Bills. Who do you like? What do you think? And what are they going to be as a team?
I think Buffalo is go back, what was it? They lost 4 Super Bowls in a row with Jim Kelly. I know Dallas gave them a couple of those smackdowns, but it's just a franchise just always seems to be, they're either really good or they go through some really bad years and now back to where they're really good, right? You've got Josh Allen, who's always every year has a chance to be that QB1 overall. I think Josh Allen's going to have a special year this year. I really do. I think bringing Dalton Kincaid in to be the big slot guy, big slot role. I think Dawson Knox, what people don't realize, is going to be more involved than I think people realize. Not only as the inline guy, but as a guy in the red zone that's been there and done that. And then you got Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. So in 3 receiver sets, and again, I say 3 receiver using Dalton Kincaid as your big slot, but I think that's your lineup. I think you're seeing a lot of level 11 personnel. I like the opportunity that they have there to take the next step. And it's so tough in the AFC, right? You've got to get through Justin Herbert. You got to get through Patrick Mahomes. You got to get through, and it's so stacked. And there's such great quarterback play. There's great coaches in the AFC, but I just think maybe this is Buffalo's year. I would love to see Buffalo find a way, as much as I would love to see my Cowboys win. If it's not them, I think Buffalo is a team that I would love to see finally, get a Super Bowl win. And it's been a long time coming. So I love what they're building in Buffalo. I really do. I think, and then James Cook, I forgot. I should probably touch on him. We're stumping the coach, so we didn't get a chance to do a research on this because we're kind of throwing teams at each other. But I love what I think James Cook is going to bring. I think people, if you look at the utilization, it's Dwayne McFarland that does the utilization report, and it's fantastic. And yes, they were preseason games, but you look at the utilization that James Cook had in early down versus also what he was doing in the passing game. I just think James Cook's going to have a special year this year, and I think there's a lot. If you were drafting him, especially 2-3 months ago, I know I was crazy enough to do a couple of drafts before the NFL draft, and I've been drafting all offseason. I don't really have any drafts. On the very last weekend of the season, I had a couple, where you got 8 hours to pick, a slow draft that I was still doing that went into the final week. But you got great value for James Cook. 2 months ago. You got good value for him a month ago. As these preseason games were played, utilization reports come out, more research is done.
What do you think? I mean, take the fantasy football side of it. Yeah. So what are we going to be looking at just watching him play football? Is he going to be Tony Pollard-like? And do you think he's going to be a 3-down back who can sustain that over 17 weeks?
I think he is a Tony Pollard guy, and that's a great example. Tony Pollard is a guy, unfortunately was drafted by Dallas, and Zeke Elliott was still in his prime, and he had to kind of sit behind him for a couple of years. And then as he got more and more reps, you just got to see the explosiveness that Tony Pollard brought to that offense. James Cook's getting that opportunity in his second year. James Cook's already ahead of the curve. So, and I think he is the RB1. I think he's the clear RB1 there. I think Damian Harris has got a good skill set, but I don't think he's the guy that you saw that he was in New England, because I think James Cook is that much better than Damian Harris. Yeah, he's going to get some short yardage work. He's going to get some goal line work. Of course he is. Latavius Murray is basically Damian Harris as an older guy, right? There's not a whole lot of gas in the tank there, but I just think from Stephon Diggs to Gabe Davis, and now you have Dalton Kincaid that can work underneath. You have James Cook that can run a little bit more of a full route tree as a running back. It's not just the screen game. It's not just the angle routes. It's not just the flat routes or the shoot routes. He's going to have an opportunity to run some routes. He's going to have a chance to play in the slot a little bit. So I think he's going to get close to, I think he's 75 targets, maybe more. I think he's going to see 38% of the rushing share, which I think a lot of people think that's probably a little bit too high. I don't. I think that's very much in the realm of possibility with James Cook.
Next question. Josh Allen. Is he, how like Peyton Manning had to really work for that first first Super Bowl? Or guys like in the past, John Elway took forever. He lost a lot early. Dan Marino never won one, got to Super Bowl year one. Are we looking with a guy like Patrick Mahomes that they're competing against? You got these quarterbacks in the AFC that are just so young and so talented. but they're going to have to continually play against him. Josh Allen, is he almost going to be a sympathetic figure at the end if this continues?
I think he would be. And I think you look at that and go, here's another quarterback that's going to come in and put up gaudy stats. Now, obviously, comparing him to Jim Kelly is so much different. They're such different quarterbacks. Jim Kelly was a stay in the pocket passer. Josh Allen is so much different than that. And in today's NFL, obviously, we reward that. But I think Josh Allen is a guy that he could be the first guy that he could throw. He's going to throw for 5,000 yards, and he can get you 600-700 yards rushing. He can get you 7-8 touchdowns on the ground. He's got the ability to give you 40 touchdowns through the air. I mean, the guy it's a highlight reel. He's just got to be a little bit smarter. Sometimes he takes on some hits that I wish he wouldn't, that aren't really necessary. And I think it's him just trying to say, hey, I'm a big dude. I'm a tough guy. I'm not afraid of contact. I'm going to run you over just as much as I'm going to step out of bounds. He needs to be a little bit smart, I think, in the long term and not put himself in so many of those positions just to gain an extra yard when he's already gotten the first down, right? Duck out of bounds. If you want to make a juke and the guy doesn't get a clean hit on you, I get it. But let's not we don't have to try to knock everybody over and stiff arm and try to bulldoze somebody. Let's be smart.
Coach, you're up. Who's my first team?
Well, I'm going to make this easy for you, right? You're a 49er guy, but I'm doing it because there's a lot of moving parts, I think, with the 49ers, especially from a fantasy perspective. There's a lot of weapons there. But I think the big story with Trey Lance being traded, Brock Purdy coming in, Sam Darnold's being brought in, and Brock Purdy being named the Week 1 starter. I want to get your take on where San Francisco's at in current state and where are they at in terms of, can they make a Super Bowl run? Are they set up to do that?
Well, let's get right into it. You did put one right on the tee for me. And first and foremost, my first opinion of San Francisco 49ers is they're a well-run organization. And I'm saying that even after the Trey Lance debacle, whatever you may call it. What I do like about the Trey Lance thing is that they weren't afraid to kind of say they made a mistake and move on. You see so many times where teams kind of save face and they hold on to something longer and they never really move off it. Well, they moved off it, and they're putting all their eggs in the Brock Purdy basket. And, as a guy whose family, I have family in Iowa, I was kind of a big fan of Brock Purdy, watching him play at the Iowa State. But then I saw a lot of, I was kind of surprised because I was high on him. And when I say high on anybody, I'm mostly saying I'm high on people who, make plays happen. And he was a guy who played for 4 years. But then I read guys that I really respect, like Coleman, Du Bois, and like Christian Williams. A lot of people weren't very high on Brock Purdy. They talked about his arm strength and this and that. So I kind of almost forgot that he was relevant, and he wasn't relevant at that time. But he came in. He did an incredible job. He's very much a facilitator. If you want to have a kind of point guard type of person run your offense, I think that's Brock Purdy. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think you hit it on the head. And I was fortunate to get to watch him play in high school here in Arizona at Perry High School, and he was a 3-year starter there. Obviously, at Iowa State, he became a 4-year starter. He's just, look, if he was 6'4", and I think I said this last week, if he was 6'4" and had a cannon for an arm, he's a first-round draft pick. But he went to Iowa State. It's not exactly QBU, right? He had to stay all 4 years, and he was Mr. Irrelevant. And look, there were some things that Christian Williams was right on film that didn't really check all the boxes. But if you know the kid and you know the family, and he's got a brother named Chubba Purdy, that's also playing at the D1 level. It's his moxie. It's just his temperament, his ability to lead a locker room, his ability to not get flustered in the face of adversity. It's all of those intangibles you've seen, and be able to make plays off script. And he's very good at manipulating the pocket. And you saw that last year with San Francisco. They weren't great on the interior of that offensive line. They were better on the outside versus the interior. So teams were trying to attack that to get him off platform. But he did a great job. I mean, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions those 5 games, and went 5-0, beat Dallas in the playoffs. Who knows how the Eagles game would have panned out? I think the Eagles still win that game, but I would have at least liked to see how that game would have played out. But I think you're dead on. I think a lot of people – and look, he's Mr. Irrelevant. Maybe it doesn't work out, but I tell you what, he certainly earned the opportunity.
He certainly has. And if he continues to stay within, just be himself. Just be himself. Because I follow a lot of people on Twitter like you do, and I'm blanking on his name, but he's very controversial with the San Francisco 49ers. He's got a podcast, but the guy's on top of it. And he was obviously pro Trey Lance from day one. and he's kind of anti Brock Purdy. I wouldn't say he's anti, but he certainly was Trey Lance the entire time. Grant Cohn, is that him?
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. I don't know if that's his name or not, but I do know the guy that you're talking about. And yeah, that's the
So,
thing, right? It's like, yeah, if you want to talk about size, speed, strength, rocket arm, look, Trey Lance checks the boxes more than Brock Purdy does, right? But
correct.
hey, there's things that aren't
But
measured.
does he with the ability to process and the ability to have the experience that he has? So we can talk
No, we saw
about this
that.
situation. Yeah, he's. I'm very impressed, so I'm excited about what their prospects are over the next few years. I'm excited too because it gives them so much freedom with everyone talked about Russell Wilson and how his development and how his ability to give them a top-notch quarterback from the third round allowed them to go on the run that they did. Well, San Francisco looks like they're about to do the same thing. But you look at the rest of the lineup, and the reason why having a Brock Purdy is it frees up money for guys like Christian McCaffrey, for guys like Deebo Samuel, got a big contract 2 years ago. For Trent Williams, it frees it up for. I mean, just Fred Warner. So their roster is just absolutely incredible. People talked about their mistake with Trey Lance. Would that cause any issues as far as firing either GM John Lynch or Shanahan? And I think it's going to work out. They made a mistake. Many people do. And they moved on. And they're in a great position. So San Francisco, go ahead.
You just make such a great point. You know what I love about it too is there's so many franchises. We always hear follow the money. The guy that's getting paid is the guy that's going to play. And as a coach and as a guy who played collegiately, I always hated that mentality, right? I don't care if the rookie is paid less than you. If the rookie's better than you, he should play. Who are the 11 guys that I can get on the field at the same time on offense, defense, special teams to give my team the best chance to win? Because I owe the organization and I owe the players in that locker room to give them the best chance to win on any given Sunday. So if you're not putting your best team on the field, that's a mistake. San Francisco recognized it. They didn't push it further. Once they recognized it, realized, hey, we've got our guy. We brought in a backup. We let him compete. Sam Darnold beat him out. Let's cut bait. Let's move on. Let's get past it. Let's not have it be a conversation. Let's not let it affect the locker room. And it's a great call by John Lynch and Mike Shanahan to make. I will keep on calling Mike, dude. I'm so stuck in the 90s. Kyle Shanahan. It's very smart for them to move on.
All right, we should probably move on to our next team, or we'll be here till tomorrow night. And the next team, you just teed one up real nice for me. I'm going to make this one. It's not going to be difficult or as difficult as I might think it is, but because you got a quarterback that's great in the system, or we'll find out if he's great in the system. Let's just get to it. The Cleveland Browns. What do you look about? What do you think? Do you think they're going to get the quarterback play they thought they were trading for? How's the organization being run? Are you excited about them this year? Tell us about the Browns.
I think that the Sean Watson thing is still it's a tough deal. I don't know that we're ever going to see the Deshaun Watson we saw in Houston. Back then, it was very carefree. He was out of the spotlight, outside of anything that had anything to do with outside of the game of football. And when you go through something like that and you're basically ran out of town and somebody takes a chance on you on a contract that many would argue you didn't deserve with all the guaranteed money and the way they did it in year one because of the suspension. So his game checks would be very small. Look, it's not something I appreciated. It's not something I liked. It's not something I'm a fan of. Enough time has gone by. I just don't know if you're Deshaun Watson, if you ever can walk into a locker room and not have a feeling of, do these guys trust me? Do these coaches trust me to be the guy? And so that to me is where I don't know that you're ever going to see that guy, because I feel like there's always in the back of his mind going to be those questions about, does this guy,
You don't think he'll ever be able to play free?
Yeah, I just don't think I just think there's so much going on. Every time you see a camera pointed at him, I think there's a part of him that probably goes, to that negative stuff. But the talent's obvious, right? I mean, he struggled last year in limited time after sitting out 11 games. Okay, you've been a lot of time out of the game. And now it's a full off season. You've had Amari Cooper, I think, is a great wide receiver one for them. Donovan Peoples-Jones stepped up last year and kind of proved his worth, and so he solidified his as a number 2, number 3 receiver. You brought in Elijah Moore, I think got a bad deal with the New York Jets. Now he's in a fresh start. I think you're going to see Elijah Moore, outplay his ADP this year. I think Cedric Tillman I was high on. I liked him better than Jalen Hyatt, admittedly so. I think there's an opportunity for him to work into the rotation here. and then David Njoku, and now finally has, I am the tight end. I don't have any, there's nobody else behind me that's really going to take any time away. If I can stay healthy, this is finally my opportunity to be a part of this offense. And defensively, we know what they can do up front with Myles Garrett. So I'm excited about, if you're a Cleveland fan, unfortunately, you're paying what I think is one of the toughest divisions in football. But I think there's reasons for optimism. If you can see Deshaun Watson clear the mechanism and ignore the clutter. We talk about a lot as coaches, right, with kids and these professional athletes, just stay off the social media and stay out of the limelight. If they can do that and he can lead and he can play at 80, 90% of who he was in Houston, there's an opportunity for Cleveland to build a roster now. There's an opportunity for them to build off of that and get some momentum.
Where are they going to be? Yeah, sorry, you kind of break it up there, but I got you back now. Cleveland. So you like Deshaun as far as he's got people around him. You feel like Nick Chubb. You got to like what you got with that guy.
Oh, well, yeah. I can't believe I forgot Nick Chubb, right? That's what happens when you stump the coach. We don't get a chance to do the research. But, yeah, I think Nick Chubb has a chance to lead the NFL in rushing. If Cleveland can play, when they're in a positive game script, that's easy. When they're in a negative game script, they just got to continue to pound the rock, use Nick Chubb to set up play action, make the throws easier for Deshaun Watson, create more space for receivers to operate. So, yeah, I am high on Deshaun Watson from a stand, but I was never a guy that was going to buy him as ADP. If I could get him around later and I can get him at value, then I was willing to take a shot at Deshaun Watson. Outside of that, because of all the noise and all the potential there, for him to make another mistake and slide backwards, especially in Dynasty, do I want to spend a draft pick at his ADP and miss? I think that can be very costly. So I tended to take the wide receiver running back at that round and feel good about my roster build, and take another quarterback a couple rounds later and feel good about it.
All right, you're up. Who's the next team we're going to talk about?
So I wanted to do this because I want to know truly what your take is. And that's the best part about this segment, is you don't know what's coming. Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers is now gone. You hit with Aaron Rodgers. He slid in the draft when out of Cal. He sat behind Favre. He became the dude, right? Packers just seem to have the luck of finding the right guys to take their franchise for the next 10 to 15 years. Now you have Jordan Love out of Utah State. He sits behind Aaron Rodgers for a few years, and now it's his opportunity. He's looked great in camp. They brought in Jayden Reed. As soon as Aaron Rodgers is gone, we're going to bring in Christian Watson. We're going to bring in Jayden Reed. We're going to bring in Romeo Doubs. We're going to draft 2 tight ends. That's like all of a sudden they're doing everything that Aaron Rodgers wished they would have done. So I want to get your take on them, both from a fantasy perspective and how you think they're going to do this year.
Well, you are really teeing these up as far as easy for me. San Francisco's easy because they're just such an incredible roster. And Green Bay's easy for me because I do somewhat have a love affair for what they're doing. And first and foremost, let's start with Jordan Love. I'm an old school guy, much like you. And I believe guys like, Carson Palmer sat his entire first year. And I believe in that. I believe that it's probably better for a lot of these guys not to be put in a situation they may not be ready for. So for Jordan Love to have the physical skills that he came out of Utah State with. Now, he struggled in his junior year. His junior year, I think he had more interceptions than he ever did in his career. However, his God-given ability was flashed all over the tape. So he's had 3 years to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, and now he's got the keys to the car. And everything, he's just so fluid. There's something about watching him. My eyes can't take off how easy he makes it look. If you talked about Jayden Reed. If you look at the throw that he had to Jayden Reed on the crossing route into the end zone against New England, that showed me that his arm talent is just as good as anyone. Just as good. It's definitely good enough to be pretty damn good in the NFL. So if he's good enough to throw the ball like that, and he's now had the ability to kind of learn behind a legend and learn from and be in the same system, I feel pretty good about his ability to be good in the NFL. So let's start right there. And now we got a guy who's now on a rookie contract. Now they did, because he had his 5th year guarantee clause coming up. So they gave him a little bump to throw him a bone without having to do much of anything. But he's still pretty darn cheap. And one of the biggest issues that Green Bay's had over the last few years, again, was that huge contract Aaron Rodgers had. Well, they don't have that anymore. So they're going to have the ability to do more things. And they did address some needs over the last 2 years on the offense of the ball. You brought up Christian Watson. He was such an incredible talent out of North Dakota State. A lot of people didn't know how raw he was, and it took him a while to get started. And you talk about route trees. Is he a guy that can only beat you with the big plays? Is he going to be someone that can get 10 to 12 targets over the middle of the field? And we don't know that yet. But they have Romeo Doubs, who cost them very little with a 5th-round pick. I like him. He seems to be another guy. You saw with the catch that he made. Now, he was out of bounds in the preseason, but he made a great catch over the shoulder. So I like the talent that he has. I really like Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed's a guy out of Michigan State who has flashed all summer long. You talk about a guy, I would never even thought that I would start Jayden Reed in week 1. In week 1 this week, you got Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs kind of suffering from some hamstring issues. If either or one of them are out, I feel okay playing Jayden Reed this week. And then you got Luke Musgrave, who a lot of people
ask you about that. There you go. That's what I want to hear about, man.
You got Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. If he doesn't get hurt, I think he might have been above Dalton Kincaid. Now, they're not exactly the same, but you talk about numbers. His numbers are so different than anything that most people have seen with the way that he tests. His issue is he's going to stay healthy. His talent has shown. He's already flashed. And for a young quarterback like Love to be able to have a big guy, big athletic guy, kind of going across the middle of the field for you all day long, they talk about a security blanket. He can throw it out to him and feel pretty good about that every time. And then you got 2 guys in the backfield that can help him out as far as take the pressure off him. You got Aaron Jones that, every year, it's always up until the last 3 or 4 years, it was free Aaron Jones. Well, he's free, and he plays incredible. He's great. And his age isn't a factor because we're talking about right now what he's doing. And I think he's great for him this year. And then you add in good old A.J. Dillon, who everyone talked about how he wasn't efficient last year and it wasn't quite what people had thought. But he did produce 7 touchdowns. He had 600 and some odd yards rushing. Gets you anywhere between 25 and 35 receptions. So I really like what they've done. And you look at Gary on the defensive line on the other side, and you get, they're not bad. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Green Bay compete for the NFC North this year. We talked about how much we love Detroit, but I'll tell you what, that YouTube TV Sunday is going to be on Green Bay, Chicago for a considerable amount of time because I'm really looking forward to seeing what this Green Bay team has, and I really like what they've done. One more thing I'm going to add, though. We talk about how they lucked into quarterbacks, and they traded a 2nd-round pick. They evaluated Brett Favre and said, "Man, if we can do anything to get him, let's get him." So I don't know how lucky that was. I think that was pretty shrewd of them. And then they waited. They see a guy like Aaron Rodgers drop. Didn't care the fact that they already had a future Hall of Famer in Favre. They picked him, and they didn't care about what that was going to do as far as hurt anybody's feelings. They did what they thought was best for the organization. They did the same thing, caused a bunch of uproar. There was nobody in the media who liked what they did, but they have a system. And if you look what it did for both those guys before them, you got to feel pretty confident in what it's going to do for Jordan Love. And yeah, I don't think they got lucky. I think they kind of know what they're doing.
Well, they've proven it, right? If Jordan Love plays the level that you and I think he can, then they've done it. They've done it 3 times now, and I think that's the key there. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm big on Luke Musgrave. His athletic score was 16th, not as a tight end. His athletic score was 16th of all positions: corners, linebackers, running backs, wide receivers. His athletic score, which obviously your size, your weight, and all that stuff comes into play, was 16th for all positions. So there's a lot of potential there with Luke Musgrave. I've got him in a lot of leagues. I was able to get him on the cheap. And again, it's another one when you do drafts early, you've done your homework on these prospects, you get some really good value. And then as Twitter goes into it and everybody hears about, what all the guys that do, the Debbie guys, the Debbie Royale guys are all talking about these prospects, then the consensus kind of finally gets in the loop on it, right? But as analysts, you kind of get ahead of the curve because you've already done the homework yourself before everybody else is making it mainstream on Twitter and some of the other apps. I guess we can't call it Twitter. We got to call it the X now. Is that what we're doing?
I don't. Well, let's just call it the place that I go for fantasy football, because I'll
Yeah,
tell
there
you
you go,
what,
man.
it brought us together, and it is everyone's so. It's a great community, and I'm very thankful that I was able to kind of jump into it. Let's get to your last team, and I don't know what you're going to feel about it, because it may not be as sexy as the teams you have teed up for me, but I'd like to know your opinion on the Denver Broncos. Was the situation last year
Well, that's a good
so
one.
bad with the coach that's what was the reason for everything? Or is Russell Wilson no longer Russell Wilson? Is Peyton know what he's doing coming in? Because we've already, on a side note, you and I were talking about depth charts and this and that, and we were kind of surprised by one of the guys on their roster that is going into week one as the starter over a Twitter darling. So with that being said, give me your opinion. What are we looking at? Is Denver doing anything? Are they going to be better?
Man, I love Sean Payton. It's one of the things with the Dallas Cowboys when they let him go as an offensive coordinator and he was able to land, I'll just say it, another franchise. I hated to see Sean Payton go. I wanted him to be the next Dallas Cowboys head coach. And there was an opportunity for him to take his time off over this last year and come back in the NFL. I still was holding hope that somehow we'd make a move or make a run at. I believe that much him as an offensive coordinator, and we saw what he did with Drew Brees. We saw what he did with that offense with Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, and you can go on and on about the guys that have come through that system, Mark Ingram. But I think Sean Payton is, if there's a guy that's going to get Russell Wilson right, Sean Payton's one of those guys. I would put Andy Reid up there, and there's a couple other guys I'd put up there too. But I think Sean Payton, just from his demeanor and what he puts up with, first of all, the unlimited, that stuff's out the window now, right? Couldn't stand it. He's not about it. He doesn't like all the stuff on the side. He doesn't like the spotlight stuff. You're a leader of this locker room. You're the quarterback of the football team. Act like a leader. Be a leader. Say what leaders say, and be an example and set the example for everything that you're asking of your teammates. So I think from that perspective, if Russell Wilson's going to make a bounce back, Sean Payton's got to help him do that. Javonte Williams sounds like is healthy coming into the season. That's a big win for Denver. They bought in Shamaj Perine just in case. I think he's got an opportunity as a patch catcher and what he did in Cincinnati with behind Joe Mixon to be a part of that backfield. I love Javonte Williams' skill set. Jerry Jeudy, unfortunately, is going to miss some time, right? But Cortland Sutton's going to get a chance to step up. What I thought was ironic with Nathaniel Hackett is Russell Wilson was always a guy that liked to attack the sidelines in his time in Seattle. He wasn't a guy that was great throwing over the middle, didn't necessarily care for it. Nathaniel Hackett was always known as a guy that loved to attack the middle. So there was always question marks going into that season last year of who's going to win out. Are we going to attack the middle of the field, or are we going to continue Russell Wilson to want to cook and want to air it out? Well, it didn't work. And so now you're bringing Sean Payton, and I think Jerry Jeudy, I was real high on Jerry Jeudy before the injury. I'm still high on him when he gets back. That's going to hurt that offense a little bit. Cortland Sutton now gets a chance. So Cortland Sutton, to me, had the chance to be that vertical guy if Russell Wilson won that argument, and they were going to be more vertical. I thought Cortland Sutton had a chance to be the guy. That didn't happen. Jerry Judy's the better talent. So let's hope that plays out. Marvin Mims is a guy I was real high on coming in the draft as a prospect. I love the opportunity he's going to get now. And now with the injuries there, Tim Patrick, unfortunately, out for the season. Marvin Mims now gets a chance to step in as a number 2 option in that offense from a wide receiver perspective with him and Cortland Sutton. And then the guy you were talking about before, Greg Dulcich, right? There's your Twitter darling, your ex darling, however you want to spin it. And then you have Adam Troutman, who right now on the Denver Broncos website, our lads, I think even on ESPN, Adam Troutman is listed as the starter. And I think we need to understand what that means. Troutman didn't do a whole lot in New Orleans as a pass catcher. He's more of an inline guy than Greg Dulcich is. To me, this tells you 11 personnel. We don't have Jerry Jeudy. We're going to go Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, and 2 receiver sets. We're going to use Greg Dulcich as the big slot and a guy that you can move around across the scrimmage. You can use him as an H-back. A lot of Darren Waller offset from the in-man line of scrimmage or tackle, kind of offset in the backfield with free releases. And then what you can do with Adam Troutman inline in both the run game and as a pass catcher. So that's what I'm seeing with Denver early on in the season until Jerry Jeudy is back. I'm seeing more of that 12 personnel, 11 personnel. And I think Russell Wilson's going to have to prove that he can be the guy that he used to be. He's not without weapons. He's got a good running back. He's got a good receiver in Cortland Sutton. He's got a good prospect in Marvin Mims. He's got a tight end that a lot of us are high on in Greg Dulcich. So I think the time is now for Russell Wilson. Hey, if it doesn't work out, it's going to be a short-lived deal for Russell Wilson because Sean Payton will not put up with it for very long. So you're going to see a backup situation, but I don't think you get there. I think Russell Wilson's going to be the guy, but I just hope he can get back to some form of who he was in Seattle. And I think Sean Payton's the right guy to get him there.
You really, the Dallas Cowboy thing was really kind of irking at you right from the start because I remember we talked about it, and I was a little bit surprised that he didn't wait either. Were you also, though, as the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, do you think there was ever any thought by Jerry to pull the plug, knowing that Peyton wanted to come back at this time?
We found out with Jerry that there's feelings that he harbors in certain situations that he can't let go of. The ego is so big. Jimmy Johnson's a prime example of that, right? As soon as Jimmy Johnson was getting all the credit for the Super Bowls, he found a way to get rid of Jimmy and brought, Barry Switzer in, who lucked into a Super Bowl with Jimmy Johnson's roster. And then, now, and I think there may have been some of that with the Sean Payton deal. Like, hey, I could bring Sean Payton back, but then I'm admitting that when I let him walk, that I made the wrong decision, right? So by not letting him come back to Dallas, I don't have to worry about that. And that's, and as crazy as that sounds, to me, that's kind of how the Jerry Jones mindset is. He does it in player negotiations. He doesn't typically spend a lot in free agency. He waits for the free agency period to be over, and then he goes bargain shopping. And that has not been a recipe for success. So it's nice to see him kind of change a little bit, go out and get a Stephon Gilmore, go out and get a Brandon Cooks. And so, but yeah, I think the Jerry Jones, Sean Payton thing, Sean Payton was very, I guarantee you was wanting to come back to Dallas if the opportunity would have been there. And if Jerry would have came calling with a serious opportunity, I think Sean Payton would have been the guy in Dallas. And I don't think Jerry Jones' ego was going to allow that to happen unless it was on his terms, meaning I'm not going to give you the freedom to make all of the decisions that you want. Correct. Like I did with Jimmy Johnson. No. I'm going to continue to be the owner / general manager, and you're going to have to be okay with that. And that's not how Sean Payton operates. And, and honestly, as a Cowboy fan, as much – and look, Will Clay's done a phenomenal job of drafting. Dallas Cowboys done a phenomenal job and got a lot of steals and drafts and really built a good roster. But I'd much rather trust Sean Payton than Jerry Jones when it comes to that. And I think Sean Payton and Will Clay could have done some really good things in Dallas together.
All right, let's move on to the last team. Otherwise, again, we'll be here forever. Who do you got for me, Coach?
The last one I've got for you is the Atlanta Falcons, because I want to know, Desmond Ridder. What do we think about Desmond Ridder going this season? There are some people that are picking Atlanta Falcons to win that division. I've got the Saints winning that division. Some people think the Falcons. They just drafted Bijan Robinson. You've got Tyler Algier. Arthur Smith likes to run the football. The Kyle Pitts situation, had a great rookie year. Terrible situation last year with Marcus Mariota. A lot of off-target throws. But what do you see from Atlanta offensively, and what you think that Arthur Smith's going to do now that Bijan Robinson's there and Desmond Ridder's now in year 2?
Year 2 for Desmond Ridder. Well, this is what it all boils down to. Is Desmond Ridder good? If Desmond Ridder is good, then we're all going to be happy. We're going to be happy as NFL fans. We're going to be happy as managers who have guys like Drake London, Kyle Pitts. I don't think the factor is Arthur Smith has been – listen, Arthur Smith might have been the worst of all time, but it really boils down to Desmond Ridder. If he can be a guy like a Russell Wilson, and I only mentioned Russell Wilson because they were both drafted at the same time, but he also is kind of like that. We talked about Brock Purdy and his little kind of almost like point guard like play. And Russell Wilson was like that at Wisconsin. And Desmond Ridder was kind of like that at Cincinnati. And just an incredible winner. He took a small program. They're not so small anymore. And, they had an incredible amount of success with him there as a quarterback. So my hope is that he is that leader. My hope is that he is the type of person who can, develop quickly and just be able to facilitate. If he can just get the ball to those guys on the perimeter and keep Bijan busy in the flats. And, Bijan can run any route that any receiver can. But my point is that it all comes down to Desmond Ridder. If he is good, we are going to be very excited about this offense, and we're going to be, because they spent money on the defensive side this year, and they spent draft capital. Look at the draft capital. They did everything people tell you not to do when taking Bijan at 8. They took a tight end at 4. They took freaking the receiver Drake at 5. So they have not been afraid to address high needs with high draft capital. So with that being said, it all boils down to Desmond Ridder. If Desmond Ridder is good, then you're going to have a team that I can compete this year in the NFC South. And if I went on record, I think we did last week, I picked the Saints to win it because I believe more in Carr and in that defense of the Saints than I do in Desmond Ridder at this time. But if Desmond Ridder has any ability to be a decent NFL quarterback, this is going to be a fun team because they have talent. We just talked about how they spent all that draft capital early. Bijan Robinson, what you're going to see out of that kid, just running routes and just everything about him. He is as good as anybody we've seen. And then you got Drake. Drake had a great year last year, despite the fact that he had Mariota throwing to him, and it was not exactly the most ideal situation. I am a little bit worried about Kyle Pitts. I'm worried about Kyle Pitts because, he's had issues with injuries. He's had issues with not being able to fit in with the way Arthur Smith wants to do things. There becomes a time where a player, for me, if he has issue after issue, I begin to think maybe he's the issue. And I hope that isn't true because we saw his rookie year with 1,000 yards that he was in. Now, granted, he only had 1 touchdown. But Kyle Pitts, another guy who just every metric, he just shoots off the board. So if he's good and if Desmond Ridder's good, we know what we have in Bijan. I feel like what we have in Drake London. I like this team. I like this team a lot. I don't think that they're a team that are going to do much more in the playoffs in year 1. They still need to address more defensively.
There are a lot of holes to fill on defense.
They do. But can we just see Desmond Ridder this year make us excited? And if we do that, then I feel like the Atlanta Falcons are truly in because they had draft capital. They had draft capital to address their quarterback need, and they have chosen not to. They've chosen to go somewhere else. So if that somewhere else works, I like where they're going.
I think because you make a good point on Kyle Pitts, and I have been a huge Kyle Pitts guy, not just as a prospect coming out of Florida, but through year 1, I think I picked him to break the Mike Ditka's record. He came close, didn't get it. The 1 touchdown was a little bit disappointing. Matt Ryan was getting towards the end of his career, but you look at last year with Mariota, I think you would take any wide receiver, tight end, and I'll say this as a guy that played the wide receiver position. If I'm in an offense and I think I'm the most talented guy on the field that wants to run the ball 40 times a game, I'd be pissed off too. And I think if it's Odell Beckham, I think if it's any Devontae Adams, you can go on down the list of great wide receivers and tight ends that would have the same complaints that Kyle Pitts had. And that's not defending Kyle Pitts. I'll say this about that. I think Kyle Pitts is another guy that when he walks in and you just watch his demeanor, like he just doesn't seem like a guy that is the rah team guy, right? He's a guy that is almost like, I'm going to sit, I'm going to stew, I'm going to not really make eye contact, I'm going to just kind of do my own thing, right? And so it's a little bit frustrating as a guy that was, and you were a coach too, it was show me the heart, show me the passion, show me the get pissed off, slam your helmet on the ground, get in a fight on the freaking practice field because you're pissed off about not getting reps, or be the guy that goes in when your turn is up, you want extra reps. It's practice, but you want to get extra reps because you want to show the coaches, hey, that's the part of me with Kyle Pitts I'll say that I think might be missing is if you think you're that talented, which I believe he is, and you're in an offensive system and you've had really bad quarterback play last year, and who knows if it gets any better this year, but the best thing for you to do is be a locker room guy, build that guy up, get extra reps with him after practice, get with Arthur Smith, get with your tight end coach, do all of the things that you need to do, but show me that you want to play and you're going to do all the right things to earn targets, right? And that's what I kind of feel with Kyle Pitts. You just watch his body language, you watch his demeanor. I feel like is missing a little bit. I do think all the talent's there, and I hope Desmond Ridder can put it together, because if you can get Drake London and Kyle Pitts, you can create mismatches, especially in the red zone, that I was very excited to see last year. I did not expect Mariota to be as bad as he was. But hopefully this year there's an opportunity for Drake London. I think he's already proven himself, and Kyle Pitts to rebound and be more what he was in his rookie year, because outside of those two guys, there's not a whole lot of options in the passing game. But you bring in Bijan Robinson, who's a phenomenal pass catcher, and you said it, he can line up in the slot. He can give you a full route tree. There were some highlights we saw of him on a wheel route. There was one of him on an angle route, one of him on an out and up, and he's a natural pass catcher. That's the one thing Tyler Algier couldn't bring. And Cordell Patterson, yeah, he ex-receiver, played running back. I get it. Give Arthur Smith a lot of credit for what he did with Cordell Patterson. He's not as fluid as a route runner and pass catcher as Bijan Robinson is. So I think that definitely adds an element to that offense. So that's great, man. I love it, man. I think you're dead on that take, dude. We certainly see a lot of like.
I don't even care about Arthur Smith.
It's all Desmond Ridder.
I'm not going to worry about what Arthur Smith does. All I want to do is see development out of Desmond Ridder. Take chances. Throw the ball freely. Don't worry about consequences. Just trust your gut and play football, because I feel like that's what he did at Cincinnati. Coach, I thought this was fun. I enjoyed it. Cannot wait for tomorrow. I cannot wait for Sunday. Let me put that back up. Sunday show. We're kicking off at 8:15. We'll break down each game. We'll get coaches' perspectives on guys to start and sit for each game. We'll also give you DFS player props. And then my favorite, we'll have a little competition to see who gets the most games correct. And, we've never actually, because we're so busy, we've never had the time with family and work and this and that. But this year we got to come up with some little wager. You're going to have your favorite bottle of bourbon that I'll owe you. And
are we tracking with the spread, or are we just going straight up? Because the spread adds a whole other element.
We're going spread.
Love it. All right.
All right. And we love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, Sunday morning, 8:15, start sit, player prop bets, and winners against the spread. Appreciate you, Coach. Can't wait to talk to you Sunday.
All right, man. We'll see you soon.